So let's start where you just kind of teased us there. Well, let's talk about what sugar even means, what that word means, to make sure we're all kind of on the same page there.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about just the word sugar itself, and what it means from a biochemistry perspective is we're just talking about molecules that contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and these molecules are arranged in different ways and in different combinations. Like, is the carbon attached to another carbon? Is it attached to another oxygen? And the different bonds between them. So sugar in the biochemistry world is used to describe very simple combinations of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So glucose, for example, has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens. Fructose actually has the same number of those atoms, just arranged in a different way. And when you join glucose and fructose together, you get sucrose. Sucrose has 12 carbons, 22 hydrogens, 11 oxygens, which is known as table sugar. That's the white stuff that you put in your coffee. It's half glucose, it's half fructose joined together. So even just stopping there after a little bit of chemistry, that means that glucose, fructose, and sucrose are all naturally occurring in fruits and vegetables. And so this is how we get the table sugar that everyone's afraid of. And we're going to get to why and why not that fear is warranted. But table sugar, again, the stuff that we just put in our coffee in the morning, is extracted from plants like sugarcane or sugar beets. These are plants that have much higher levels of sucrose than, say, asparagus. But the main point, what I'm really trying to drill here, is those carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules in the bowl of your table sugar are the same as the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen molecules naturally occurring in, say, carrots or strawberries, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes we think about like table sugar in and of itself is the problem. And it's like, no, the molecules aren't these like freakish mutant chemicals, right? Chemicals gets people scared when really it's just, hey guys, we've got different elements from the periodic table and they're all jumbled together, right? Yep. And I'd really even just to point out here, like high fructose corn syrup, again, people worry that this is some mutant type of chemical, when really high fructose corn syrup is just another mixture of glucose and fructose. And the numbers when you hear high fructose corn syrup tell you how much is fructose. So high fructose corn syrup 42 and high fructose corn syrup 55, which are the most common variations of this, that's 42 and 55% of fructose respectively, the rest being glucose. So what's really interesting there is you hear high fructose corn syrup and you think, wow, it's a lot of fructose. When in reality, corn syrup, before it's been modified with fructose, is 100% glucose. And that's why it's called high fructose, because they've added fructose. But basically, high fructose corn syrup has almost the equivalent combination of glucose and fructose molecules as table sugar. Again, it's not some weird chemical mutant combination here. But anyway, so when getting back to just sugar conceptually, when we're talking about sugar and when we're talking about its chemical properties, it's just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules arranged in different ways. And the most common forms we see are these glucose and fructose molecules, or sticking them together to form sucrose. Mm-hmm. And any of these things that have ose at the end, when you hear their name, like dextrose or maltose or lactose, which are other sugars that you hear of, these are, again, just small molecules of different arrangements of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Okay, so where then does... one of the things you always kind of are trying to counter is this confusion around fructose, around sugar. And so where does it start to get confusing, or why has it gotten confusing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly going through some of that chemistry, probably helps a little bit, but I think more of the confusion comes from the application, right? Because we don't sit down to a bowl of glucose molecules, or we don't sit down to a bowl of fructose molecules by themselves, right?
Thank goodness. That doesn't sound good at all.
I guess you could start in on a bowl of table sugar. Not many people do though, right? Instead, we eat foods and they have various compositions that result in different doses of the sugar. And of course, they have other things besides the glucose and fructose molecules. They've got protein, maybe water, vitamins, etc. So there's that word dose again. And our listeners probably are experts by now in that one. But we can't think about things like sugar as good and bad. We often have to ask, or we always have to ask the question of how much. Like, how much of this are we consuming relative to how much we need? And that answers the question of yes or no. And so when we think about how sugar appears in food, I first like to point out kind of like a continuum of processing, if you will. So if we have fruit at the unprocessed end, fruit has, yes, sugar, but it has water, vitamins and minerals, phytochemicals, and fiber. And then the first step of processing away from the whole fruit, we could say, would be juice, where they remove the fiber, but there's still water and there's still vitamins and minerals. And then the next step from juice might be like a syrup, where they start taking out some of the water. And then the next step might be the crystalline powder that's on our coffee table, right? So as we go along this continuum of processing, the sugar dose increases as a percentage of the total weight of the item. Mm-hmm. And so in fruit, the sugar dose is low because there's lots of water, fiber, and other stuff. And by the time we get to table sugar, it's all just sugar, right? And so when you hear the words added sugar, they have taken one of these concentrated sources, which could be the table sugar, the powder version, it could be even a juice, it could be even a syrup, all of these concentrated derivatives from the fruit, and added it to the product. And so when we now start applying that concept to when we go to eat food, fruit, the sugar dose is low, but there's so many other things that make this a valuable food: the water, the vitamins and minerals, fiber, phytochemicals. And so this is where when people say fruit is just sugar, it's like not even close, not even close. I mean, you're overlooking all of those other components I just mentioned. And the fact that you will, fill up on the water, let's say, and feel full because of the fiber before you've eaten too much sugar. So it's a low sugar dose in the fruit, but high nutrient value of what you're getting when you look at the whole package. And then conversely, when we look at something like ice cream, there's sugar, but there's also lots of fat calories, and there's no real vitamins and minerals and fiber and phytochemicals. So in that type of product, we get this high sugar dose and low value proposition of the total nutrient reward, you could think of it. Mm-hmm. So the more processed the food is, the more sugar it has and the less of the other beneficial nutrients. And that's really the concept that you have to understand about dose. Again, the sugar molecules in the ice cream aren't worse or better than the sugar molecules in your strawberries. What makes it worse is the total food package. You're going to eat so many more calories from that product than you would naturally.